Hey, Engraver here. Welcome back to my channel and Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. I hope you are doing well this Christmas season. We're getting into the new year. And before we get into the new year, I wanted to add a special episode to my hero theme series. And this hero in this episode is Batman. I wanted to compose a very simple melody with some simple harmony and a bass line for Batman. Now, right off the bat, this is a very rudimentary position in my composition process where the instrumentation is not fleshed out, the rhythm is not fleshed out. We have a very simple melodic line, a contour. You see here, just with this harmony document, some stacked chords and a very, very simple bass line. And I'm going to start with the harmony document here, and then we're going to go into hearing the harmony with the melody. So without further ado, we're just going to go ahead and listen. It's 32 bars long. It's a little repetitious, but I just want you to hear and feel the tragedy and the nobility and the heroism of this iconic character, the Batman. I forgot to start at the beginning. Here's the beginning. And these 8 bars are repeated, going from the minor 1 to the major 5, to the major 3, to the major 7, to the minor 4, to diminished, and a smooth 1-6-4 to 5 cadence. Another repeat, same 8 bars. And you might ask, why am I repeating these 8 bars 3 times? Well, first of all, I really like the harmony, but there's a reason. And then the conclusion, going into the major 7, to the major 3, to the root position major 7, to the minor 4, to the flat 2, and a sustain to our Picardy third. So very simple. So before we get into the melody, we do have a little bit of motion, some dense harmonic motion going on. Starting with that very solid root position of the minor 1, the D minor here, going to our dominant in first inversion, going to our major 3rd, to our major 7th, to our minor 4th, adding a diminished with a little bit of crunch, as we see here between the D and the E. So yes, that is our minor 2nd diminished, which is the E minor diminished, with a suspended D there. So you could actually say that that is a 7 chord. I didn't write that in, but oh well. Then we have our smooth motion from the 1-6-4 to the 5, to leading into the next the next harmonic cycle, which is 8 bars. So these first 3 sets here of 8 bars here are the same, harmonically the same. We also have a moving bass line going up by a step here. Very, very nice to get that rich harmonic density with just the bass line going up a step or a series of steps down a step. Then we get into a little bit of an intervallic leap here. So step here, and then a nice intervallic leap to the 4th, the minor 4 chord, and then a very low B flat there. Oh, I realize this is 2nd inversion. Yes, actually, yes, both the 5 chord and the diminished 2 chord is in 2nd inversion. I think I had said 1st. And then also 2nd inversion here. So the use of 2nd inversion more than 1st inversion or root is fine. All right, and so we've got just some things happening here. If I may, starting with the top line of the harmony, we're going down semitones from this D to C sharp to C natural, sustaining holding that suspension there. So the C is suspended with a little bit of stepwise motion in the inner voices of the chord as the bass drops. Then we go into the B flat, holding the B flat again. So having that common tone harmonic motion, which is really important for chordal density. And then that dominant, also suspended. And suspension is a very, very important thing in Baroque music. I forgot to say, coming off of my stream on how to compose an original piece or music theme for Batman, you want suspension when you're working with Baroque elements, musical elements in the Baroque style. You do want chordal suspension. You want actually melodic suspension, as we will see in a little bit here. One way we can do that is as the bass is moving, the bass is very active here. A little bit of suspension here at the end with the low A. But as the bass is moving and as the inner members of the chords themselves are moving as well, you're keeping the top line suspended and a little bit of the bottom line here too. So here's the top line again. To get that rich, dense kind of pull and yearning. And we also have suspension in the middle chords when the top voice is moving down. So as the top voice is moving down here, step by step, da, da, da. Sorry, my voice cracked. It's kind of late tonight. We have A here, just moving, then moving down, just inching its way down. And then F to E here, just moving ever so slightly. And that's a compositional technique where you can do very, very minimal motion, whether it's suspending one note over the course of 2 measures or 2 beats, depending on the rhythm, while other voices are moving. That's really important for something like Baroque, and I think something very important for Batman. So we're repeating this harmony, the 8 bars, as I mentioned before, bars 1 through 8, repeated here, and then repeated here, all the same. And then we have a concluding phrase here where we're going back to the minor 1 as before. You can see minor 1 here, and here, and here, and up on the top as well. But instead of going to the second inversion of the dominant chord, we're going to lead the listener into a major 7, which is in first position, first inversion, I should say, here. And so that's kind of a deceptive motion. You're expecting that very tense dominant chord, but we're now opening it up to a major kind of a warmer sounding chord, going into another major chord and into another major 7 at the root here. So we'll hear maybe from 17 all the way to the end, hearing the difference between these 2 last lines. And you can see also that the bass line is more or less the same except here. So let's hear that again. Like that crunchy chord. So much more hopeful now that we're in the major chords. Back to minor, and then low. With a nice suspension into the Picardy third. Ending on a major chord, the D major chord versus the D minor chord. So we're starting in minor and then we're opening in major. That's the final note I would have for Batman. Now, to bring all this to mind again, as a recap from my stream, there are elements of the Baroque that we do need to address here. The first I just said, suspension with our chords. We will also see that with our melody. So from our top line to our bass line to the chords in the middle, we do need notes hanging in suspension between at least 2 bars. The next thing is the diminished chord. So we have here the diminished minor 2. It has a very anxious kind of clenched fist feel. We go from a major 7 to a minor 4. So we have the same notes, except I'm adding simply an E here. So we're going from a G minor to an E diminished. All I'm adding is that E to add that angst. And we are dropping the bass from a G to a B flat. So we're causing this more or less open chord with the minor 2, the G minor, to that kind of clenched fist, kind of claustrophobic, very, very dense to diminished in second inversion. And we have that repeating, of course, in the next 8 bars and the next 8 bars. And then we also, actually, to be honest, I didn't realize this, but that's the only diminished chord I'm using right now currently for this theme. And I think it's enough for what the melody needs to be. But I would say when you're working with minor, especially that element of Baroque, maybe add a few other diminished types, whether it's a secondary dominant or maybe even using the leading tone, like C sharp in this case for D minor. So we do need our diminished chords when working with this kind of Baroque style music and for this iconic character Batman. The next thing is very, very important. It's kind of subtle, but I would say is very, very important, and that is our flat 2 chord. In this case, in D minor, it would be our E flat major. And all you have to do is take the second degree of the minor, in this case it's E, lower it 1 semitone to an E flat, and you've got this very somber tone. Again, this is MIDI instrument, so it's not that somber a feel, but you get the idea. So we're going to go from a major 7 to a minor 4 to a very pulled down major flat 2. Let's go ahead and hear it. I have to resolve this. All right. I didn't want that. So the flat 2, whatever key you put in, especially with your minor, you got to do this with your minor modes and all of that. That is very typical, or that I wouldn't say typical, but it is frequently found in Baroque music, even early Baroque music, where you've got that low 2. In later music, in the classical period, it's you can use the I believe it's the third of the chord that causes it to be a Neapolitan 6 chord. But if you don't have that, if you just want that nice root in the E flat here, you just want that pulling you down, use the flat 2. And I actually tried it with the Neapolitan. I tried it with the third and the bass, and it didn't sound as impactful. So I kept it where it's the root, where E flat is the root, and it sounds great because I'm going to minor, this kind of sustained, not minor. I'm going to the D, the tonic, in a kind of sustained motion there. And so after that, we talked about suspension. We talked about diminished chords, the flat 2 chord, and then we're talking about our Picardy third, which raises that minor third to a major third, so that F for the D minor chord to an F sharp. And there we go. Now, we will put this in context with the melody. So let's give it some melodic context. And if I haven't already addressed it, one might say, well, why are you using all of this repetition? Why are the first 3 staves repeated? Well, maybe the harmonic side or the bass line is being constantly repeated, but you need that repetition to add variance, in this case, to the melody. Now we're going to add the melody to it, and before I explain the melody, let's just go ahead and hear it with our harmony and our bass line. So that is the first draft of a melody, a complete melody for Batman, something I would think for Batman. Again, it's very much crude as far as the MIDI instrumentation with the piano and the soprano. Now, as far as instrumentation goes, I would have, some really beefy sounds, with maybe electronics, because I'm an electronic music composer. But I love that yearning of the soprano, especially especially with these really high notes. You can see that these notes are highlighted in kind of this golden yellow, and that is MuseScore telling you, hey, this might be a little too high. This might be outside the soprano range. And actually, for the typical singer for a soprano, I don't think I would exceed A, this note here. And we actually go as high as C here. But as far as, an electronic sound library with that soprano voice, or like an electronic sounding, maybe just a library of voices, it would be quite human. It would be quite human and spiritual to incorporate the soprano voice, because it has that yearning. It takes a lot of breath and it takes a lot of stamina and endurance to sing that kind of line. But these are MIDI instruments, so it won't be as impactful as a full-blown, orchestra or choir, or even more in-depth instrumentation, with electronics. But that I would consider, the soprano voice, because it is spiritual. The higher order of things is very much part of Batman's journey, and the spiritual is part of his journey. He really works with death. Death is his fuel to keep pursuing the good and fight the good fight, especially regarding the death of his parents. And also soprano, you can think of the murder of his parents took place when he was a boy, and boy choirs, they have that innocent soprano. So you want to kind of touch on that higher spiritual order of things, as well as the innocence and the yearning of the soprano voice. So I think I would consider using a voice type for the instrumentation. Now, getting into the melody itself, let's talk about a few things with the structure. As before, with my previous draft with the harmony and bass line only, it is 32 bars. And I had established before that, the first 3 staves of harmony and bass are repeated. There's no change in the harmony, apart from this shift up here in the second line, in the dominant, going from the 1/6/4 to the dominant, going up 1 octave to the A. We do have that suspended down here, and then here and here, and then it stays that way. It has that low A to the jump to the higher octave, and concluding with that D minor. So that's the only variance in the change of these 3 grand staves with the harmony and bass. There really is nothing changing about the harmony and bass. And, one would say, well, that's kind of boring or redundant. Why would you have that? Well, I keep that harmony intact, that repetition intact for 24 whole measures, because I'm gonna add variance to the melody. We have our 8-bar phrases in the melody. So we'll just play the first melodic line of this right here, from measures 1 to the end of 8 here. And this is our first phrase, the antecedent phrase, the first phrase before the concluding phrase, the first clause of the sentence. So that's our first 8 bars. That is the call and response, or the antecedent to leading to the consequent phrase, or the question to the answer phrase, is 8 bars. It's incomplete. We've got that half cadence there, that 5 here, leading in to the next phrase. Measures 9, we've got measure 9 here, all the way to the end of measure 16 here. That is the concluding phrase. It's not the concluding phrase because this melody is 32 bars long, but it is the concluding phrase of the first big phrase. It's a giant phrase of 2 8-bar phrases. So we're going to actually hear that in context from the question phrase, these 8 bars here, to the answer phrase right here as well, both ending on a half cadence. So the same harmonic presence there, but look at the melodic line. If you are if you are able to read music, or even just to hear the contour, you can see and hear that the difference is there, where we have just a little bit of a slow motion with kind of that yearning, kind of, reaching higher and higher, and then kind of steadily dropping and reaching a little bit and steadily dropping. But in measure 9, we do have quite an intervallic leap, which is perfect for Batman because, he leaps. He does a lot of that ninja work with the buildings and the city skylines, and also leaping, with his cape and all of that. And so we need a little bit of an intervallic jump like that, which is introduced here in measure 9 in the concluding phrase of the first big phrase. And you can see also it's reaching higher and higher, as the character works in the night and he climbs higher and higher, whether scaling a building or catching the wind under his wings. He is aloft. He is going higher and higher, and we need that sense that in the music, that musical sense of going higher in pitch. I will actually play it from the beginning so we can hear the second phrase, the concluding phrase, in the context as I mean it to have you hear it, if that makes sense. That's the question phrase, and this is the phrase answering that question. So, 16 bars of a very different melody. And we'll go down to measure 17, but I wanted to say that's a very good melody, 16 bars complete, but for us to have it be memorable, for us to be able to sing it, on a walk in the park or in the car, we have to repeat the phrase. And I repeat this first phrase here in the staff below, the third grand staff, starting with measure 17. Pretty much the same contour. In fact, let me scroll this down just a little bit, maybe see what that looks like. Can we see it? Yes, we can. So here's the first 8 bars, repeated down here in bars 17 to 24. It's the exact same melodic line. It's the same contour with just a little bit of difference here. And that difference is actually the last measure of the phrase, where I have a D suspending, then dropping to the C sharp, where I have the C sharp here. And actually, I do have these measures to be the same, but to add a little bit more rhythmic variance, I might want to be a little simpler with the first phrase. So I'm just going to go ahead and try this out in real time. Just a D, just a very simple contour, sustaining. Then we would have more activity here. So let's go ahead and hear what that whole note sounds like. I don't know. We'll go back to 141. I did like that size. All right, let's hear it. Might not work, but it might. We'll see. It's okay. Repeat of the first phrase, same harmony, same bass line. And And that's it. These last two measures are the only measures that are different from bars 1 through 8, but it's the exact same phrase, and it needs to be repeated. It needs to be repeated with the same melody and bass line for it to be memorable. And now we will have the concluding phrase, the final phrase, the final phrase of the second big phrase, but really the final phrase of the whole thing, where we do change the harmony. So I will start with measure 17 again. All right, so maybe your ears picked up something a little similar with the last phrase as well. If I go back to 110%, you'll see that there is, let's see if I can just line it up just right. Might be a little small on the device, but maybe we can see here. We've got the second phrase, the concluding phrase of the first 16 bar, major phrase, I should say. Having that nice little bum, bum, ba-ka-da, with that rhythm there, leading all the way to a nice high B flat, but that is not the highest note in the last phrase. However, we do have a little bit of similarity here with these two bars and these two bars with a different harmony. And then we have somewhat of the same contour here. Oops, let's even that out. We have the F, A, G, F going down, but now we have F, A, G leading up to A to a very high C, which is different from this lower G. So the high C is that, you know, grand feeling that I'm the hero, I'm the defender, I'm here to protect you, I believe in the higher order of things. So you need that height, you need that pull in the melody to go very, very high with the iconic character Batman. So we do reach up to C, and then we resolve more or less the same way with this B flat here and the B flat here, same rhythm, and also the same rhythm and pitches here. Now, rather than the cadential 1, 6, 4 to 5, we've got this kind of open sustain, not with the F here, but with the G leading to an E and F sharp. So the harmony does change, but the melodic contour is more or less the same with just a little bit of variance. But it's enough variance to make it exciting, and it also adds a lot more color to it, but it has that repetition where the person can remember an iconic theme like this. Now I say iconic quite loosely. I would add a little bit more intervallic jumps within the phrase. I would add a variation to each of these phrases or the theme in general. Very simple contour for now, but just to give you an idea of what I would think to do when given the task to compose for Batman. So let's go ahead and talk about a couple other things, maybe one or two things. The other thing is that I wanted to mention is the suspension here. So we had harmonic suspension with the voices, whether it was the top voice or the bottom voice or the inner voices in the middle with the chords, as you can see here, down here. We have a little of that with the bass line there, but we also have it with the tied note going into the next measure. And this is really important. It has the motion of the chords going from one chord to the next chord while keeping the melody pitch the same adds a lot more yearning than if you were to just resolve it to a C sharp here. So let's hear that nice suspension leading into the C sharp. It has a lot more dissonance, a lot more angst, because that C sharp, or actually I should say D rather, this D is working against this C sharp. Then it resolves to the C sharp. There's almost like a sense of release with this dominant once the C sharp comes here on beat 3, going into the E, which is also part of the dominant chord in D minor. And I have it also here. I have it tied here. So you hear a little bit of that dissonance before resolving to the E, before finally resolving to the tonic as well. I have it here. And then I have a beautiful E flat chord with the B flat in the soprano. And so that suspension, that D suspension, that 4-3 suspension, I think it's a 4-3 suspension with the G to the F sharp. Actually, it's the G here, resolving to the F sharp there. So I just put a 4-3 there just above that measure. But you know, those tied chords and reflecting the tied melodic pitch here and here, a little bit here, a little bit here, a little bit here. Well, definitely there, definitely at the beginning. And I love that because I talked about this on the stream where it's that angst and that yearning that is of the character Batman and his story, you know, what his life would have been like if his parents had not died. But also in music, as a composer, you kind of want to be very literal in the music sense. So this tied here, you know, what does this tie look like? You know, the thing tying this D to the next D, you know, this whole note to the next half note. Well, that actually looks like a tool that Batman would use, like a grappling hook to suspend a line from building to building or a bridge to another object. So you actually can, as a composer, probably should, as a composer, be literal in the sense. So harmonically speaking and analytically speaking, yeah, it works in the technical sense, in the musical sense, but why not be actually poetic, actually literal in your music by saying, oh, okay, well, Batman goes from one building to the next and on this, you know, suspending line with his gadgets and gears. Well, you can actually depict that literally with the music, and it sounds great as well. It sounds like yearning, and it sounds like something out of Batman's tool belt. So we'll try it again. Actually, we'll listen to it one more time before we adjourn. But hopefully you enjoyed this rough draft of the Batman theme, my Batman theme. So the repeat of the first phrase. Adding a little variance to these last two bars. And a higher reach of pitch in the last final phrase with a change of harmony. And that is my rough draft of my original Batman theme. And I would add a lot more ornamentation and instrumentation in the mix as I go. But yeah, I would say that this probably would be a pet project in the future. So that is my take and my approach on how to compose an original Batman theme. I hope you enjoyed that as the one and only installment of my Hero Theme series for the year 2021. More to come, I promise, on that series, as well as video game soundtracks. But thank you always for watching and listening. Always be on the lookout for some more sound experimentation in SuperCollider or in Logic Pro or in composition in general, and some live commentary every Monday night. And until I see you next, keep producing, composing, and preserving the art and music you love. I'll catch you later.